Hey BBC, you know you can send your games to me for review. Jasper did that and he played a fantastic game with the white pieces here. E4 and he goes for the close Sicilian with knight c3. Knight f3 is the most common move. d6 and now it's become a Grand Prix attack. The main plan in the Grand Prix, if black tries to like fianchetto, let's say with g6, is to develop the bishop to the most aggressive square where it hits f7. Bring the knight up. So let's say black makes a move, bring the knight up. Usually black tries to close this diagonal. We castle, and then to play f5, even if it costs a pawn. It may not work in this exact position, but the idea is to play f5, and if they open, it opens up this very powerful bishop, so you think about things like knight g5 later. Generally speaking, white prepares f5 by playing queen e1, so let's say queen e1, castles, queen h4, so we have pressure this way, got pressure this way, so like knight g5 is coming, knight c6, d3. Now let's say black plays a nothing move, we can go f5, and already black is in big trouble here, because if we take, we can play something like bishop h6. And this is generally how the Grand Prix is played. We're not so concerned if they just take this, because then we'll just bring another piece into the attack. And you can see the queen's going this way, bishop's going to trade off. This is one of black's key defenders. He can try something like knight f5, but then we'll just take it. If he takes back, we've once again opened up this bishop, and we can probably just take here now, take, check, king up, and there's probably various ways to win. Let's see if I can find one. Knight d5 is a move. Knight d5, you take another piece. Let's say queen check. Here check, king up, and g3 is checkmate. So that's generally the idea, to bring the queen out along this diagonal, sack a pawn with f5 to open up this bishop, and then trade off black's key defender in the Grand Prix. But let's see how the black player played this game. It's very interesting. When knight f6, now Jasper gives a check, which is fine. Probably black should block now with the bishop, I'm guessing. If we block this way, then we have to be a little bit concerned about e5. And if we take twice, the knight doesn't have a good retreat. It could go to g8, but I mean, we're undeveloping a piece. We could throw in a6 perhaps. Maybe a6 works, because if we take on d7, they take back, and we've saved our knight. If we take on f6, they take back. Maybe this is possible, actually. I didn't see this idea, but I definitely would have considered playing knight bd7. Knight c6 is probably fine. It's kind of like a Rosalimo. Rosalimo goes e4, c5, knight f3, knight c6, bishop b5 in the opening. And white's main idea in the Rosalimo is to double these b-pawns. So let's see how Jasper plays. So it develops a piece, which is fine. Now I'm guessing black should go bishop d7, so when white decides to take, we have to take back with the bishop. e6 is definitely an inaccuracy because of captures and castles, and Jasper still has the same plan of queen e1 out here and eventually checkmating the black king. The main two problems for black in this position is, one, his pawn structure isn't very good because he's a doubled, and also this bishop hasn't really got any active play. If we ever play e5, we can take it, and if black ever recaptures, then these pawns will be doubled and isolated, which is very bad. If this bishop ever goes up here, then we can play like b3 and sometimes even, d3 and b3 just to stop any c4 ideas. Queen c7. I don't know what black is really aiming for with this move. Okay, d3 is a good move. Now, if black goes e5, as I mentioned, we can just take it. And you can see these very ugly doubled pawns that are isolated. I like to call them pawns that don't have any friends. Same with this one. Now, in a perfect world, this knight should be on c4, because there it hits the e5 pawn, and then the bishop can go to d2 and come out to a5, or to c3 where it hits e5 again. Another typical plan for white in these positions is to play a move like knight a4, b3 and bishop a3 to put pressure on this doubled c-pawn. And that's often very successful and very hard to meet when you're black in these types of structures. So I think that's already winning for white, that position. If d5, once again we get the same sort of plan with knight a4 and bishop a3. Black will of course aim for c4, but if he does this, if he plays for c4 like straight away, we can take and we can swap and go knight e4, and they can't take because of the pin this way, and the knight's jumping into d6. The king can't castle. There's going to be an eventual f5 later to open up this rook against the king, and it's just a very, very horrible position. This rook is completely out of play. And white really only has one piece left out of action. It's this rook, and it's going to go to the open file, where I can put a lot of pressure here. Okay, bishop e7 was played. Queen e1, so a very typical plan in the Grand Prix. Castles. And e5, a fantastic move. Black does not want to capture because once again these pawns will be isolated and doubled and weak and have no friends. And knight e4, so it's threatening to take here, leaving those guys weak again. But also white has a bit of a space advantage because black's pieces are cramped. If you think about this bishop, it can't really get out, neither can the rook. So white wants to avoid exchanging pieces. So queen g3 is a very good move. It puts indirect pressure onto d6. It lines up on the king. So maybe we're threatening like f5 and bishop h6 to checkmate on g7. And if black blocks with g6, then we can take the rook on f8 if we wish. So king h8 was designed against bishop h6. And now Jasper displays a fantastic move. Very typical of these structures is c4. But you don't always want to play c4 if the knight can jump in to, let's say, c2 and back to d4. Because the more pieces that come off will favor black because he's cramped. And if he can ever open up the position, the advantage of the two bishops will be really good because bishops are good in open positions. But he just outcalculated his opponent here. f5, another absolutely fantastic move. So black is completely lost now. If we take here, pawn takes d6 as a fork, which is protected by the knight and the queen, and that wins. So, because when we take the bishop, we're going to be hitting the rook as well, so black's not going to have time to take our knight. If we play pawn takes d5, e5, knight takes. Now we can't take on f5 anymore because the queen here is unprotected, and we have a discovered check, winning the queen. Or we can go to g6 as well, which is also possible, which wins the queen. So black played d5, and fantastic move again, f6. I'm guessing if pawn takes... Oh, actually, what am I talking about? If pawn takes here, it's just checkmate. Like, even international masters miss things. Okay, so g takes f6 was played. Queen h4. So if we go pawn takes pawn now, opening up a discovery on the queen, we can go knight f6, which threatens checkmate, and if black takes, check, king back, and bishop h6, and it's mate next move on g7, because the dark squares around the king are very weak. So he did capture, queen h4 was played, he took on e4, take on f6. Now the main threat is knight g5, threatening checkmate, which can't be stopped. And we can't take on f3 because of pawn takes, attacking the rook. The rook can't move to g8 because of check, we must block, and then we could promote this pawn to a rook or a queen with checkmate, which is just game over. And if rook this way, then it's the same checkmate as before, I believe. Yeah, and you can't stop checkmate on g7. So he played rook g8 in the game, pawn takes e7, threatening check again and bishop h6, or check and e8 queen, so bishop d7 was played. Check, rook g7. Now bishop h6 wins. Knight g5 was a bit cleaner, threatening to go check and then check. And then I believe queen f8 is possible. There's various different wins in this position, but anyway, we'll see this one. Takes, bishop h6, and we can take the queen. They can't take back because rook f8 is checkmate. So that's really quite nice. Bishop h6 was played, which is fine. And Jasper went on to win the following moves. A very, very good game by Jasper. I'm very pleased. Like, this is how I want to play. So this is fantastic. Thanks for watching.